we're looking at Aaron Rodgers versus Joe Burrow and the shocking Cincinnati Bengals at 3-1. And I really want to touch here on Cincinnati's ability to score the football or score in general, because man, they're doing it on multiple sides. I mean, Joe's throwing touchdowns, Joe Mixon's playing a part, and I just think that the acquisition, or should I say the drafting of Jamar Chase has so far panned out better than I would have thought. Joe Burrow's doing what he needs to do. I mean, the speech he gave last week on Thursday night really speaks volume about this team and his veteran leadership. And he's literally in his second year. He's coming up to he hasn't even played a total of 16 games. He was hurt in week 10 of last season. So he played 9.5 games. This year, we're going into week 5. So we're at a total of 15. He hasn't even played a full season in the NFL. He's got a captain's patch with 2 stars, and he's already breaking down the huddle and getting the team hyped before games. The presence that this kid brings into a locker room and the ability to want to follow him to war and run through a brick wall for him is something that needs to be addressed. The entire team respects him, and they love him. The offensive line obviously isn't much better than it was last year, but I see that Zach Taylor has adjusted this playbook to where they're either settling with max protection or they're just getting the ball out a lot faster, because this offense is scoring, I don't want to say at will, but they're scoring at a higher pace and clip that they were last year, and I think that makes a big difference. The defense is playing solid football. I would say probably an NFL average. They're not bad and they're not phenomenal. So this is a very good and well-rounded team. This is going to be their first really, really big test. I know that some would say that was probably Pittsburgh last week or 2 weeks ago, but we all know that this isn't the same Pittsburgh team that we've been seeing over the past couple of years. So I would say this is definitely Joe Burrow's first test against a really tough opponent. And if I'm reading this correctly, I believe Cincinnati is actually going to be home. So you don't even have to worry about the weather implications, if there are any, at Green Bay, the freezing tundra that is Lambeau Field. But overall, I don't necessarily know if that's going to be enough to compete with the former MVP in Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, the Packers are on an absolute demolishing tyrant of the NFL since they were agitated and embarrassed in week 1 against the New Orleans Saints. So I would say Joe Burrow fights this tough. He probably has a couple of turnovers, maybe a pick or two. He does have to really go up against Jair Alexander, who is probably one of the better corners in the NFL. I don't necessarily know if they've had a corner, at least personnel-wise, that they've gone up against that could really change the dynamic of a game. But the issue is I do not know if the Packers are going to be able to get to Joe Burrow. So this is a really good offsetting kind of prediction, because you have Aaron Rodgers on one side, and I don't know if Cincinnati's defense can stop him. And then on the other side, aside from the addition of Jalen Smith and the presence of Jair Alexander, I don't know if that defense is going to be able to stop the surging Bengals right now. So if I had to give a prediction, I'm probably just predicting Green Bay, just because I don't think anybody can guard Devontae Adams in the NFL in general. So I do think that they do connect on a touchdown or two between Aaron Rodgers and Devontae. So I'll probably predict this to be about a 10-point win for Green Bay, maybe around 35-24 of some sort. I think Cincinnati gets behind the 8 ball a little early. They probably have a couple of turnovers in the beginning. They may rally towards the middle, if not the end of the game, but it's just going to be too late. I don't know if Green Bay's offense will be stopped.
Oh, this is an easy one for me. I think the Packers get this one easy. I think the Packers win this one by 10 plus. Just because Cincinnati is relatively young when it comes to experience, and they've had a very good start to the season. Granted, they're 3-1, and it seems like a lot of momentum is definitely riding with the young kid in Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow, despite the fact that he had a shortened season last year due to his torn ACL, he's played relatively well this year in it's legitimately his second year, but he hasn't played a full season like you mentioned. But he's been impressive, but not as impressive as Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, outside of that week 1 loss to the Saints, he hasn't thrown an interception since. He had 4 touchdowns against the Lions in week 2. He followed that up against the 49ers with 2 touchdowns and essentially the game-winning drive that set up Mason Crosby for that 50-plus yard game-winning field goal. And then against the Steelers last week, and the Steelers, despite how bad they are offensively, still have a relatively good defense. He was still able to get it done, threw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I don't think that Cincinnati's defense is in any way, shape, or form better than what the Steelers currently have, despite how bad their offense is. And I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to light up this defense. Granted, they are the road team, so they may face a little bit of a stiffer challenge within maybe like the first quarter or two. But I think in the second half, I just think that Green Bay opens it up. They get the second half adjustments that they need. And I hate to kind of put it in this way, but I think they take the young kid to school in Joe Burrow. I think this is going to be one of those games where this is a learning experience for Joe Burrow, but it'll be a good one just because you're going up against arguably one of the best quarterbacks that we've seen in this generation, specifically really within like the last 10 years or so. And I just think that connection with Devontae Adams is just too much to handle. I can see Devontae Adams potentially getting 10 to 15 targets in this game, potentially getting 10 receptions, getting over 100 yards receiving. And I just don't know how Cincinnati is going to be able to handle the offensive firepower that Aaron Rodgers and that Green Bay offense produces. And I'm not even talking about Aaron Jones yet. And Aaron Jones didn't necessarily have the best game against the Steelers, so I think they have a bounce back game with him. I could definitely see him popping off for 100 yards rushing. I just think that the offense from Green Bay is going to be too explosive for Cincinnati to handle. And I see the Packers winning this one maybe like 34-24, just because that bad man and Aaron Rodgers, I think he's going to be able to get it done. And I think this will be a very good learning experience for Joe Burrow and that young Cincinnati team. But I think they do kind of have a comeback down to earth game. And I think when it's all said and done, I think the Packers move to 4-1 and the Bengals drop to 3-2 after week 5.